One morning, people woke up with money. Their wallets were not empty. Their bank balances still showed numbers. Their salaries still existed on paper. But something was wrong. Stores hesitated. Cashiers paused. Screens refreshed again and again. Money had not disappeared. It had simply stopped working. Not because it was banned. Not because it was destroyed. But because the one thing it depends on, trust, quietly collapsed. This is not a story about poverty. This is not a story about inflation. This is a story about what happens when the most powerful illusion humans have ever created suddenly fails. Money is not food. It is not shelter. It is not medicine. You cannot eat it. You cannot build with it. You cannot survive on it for even one day. Money only works because everyone agrees it works. That agreement is older than most nations, more fragile than most people realize. The moment that agreement weakens, money becomes what it truly is. Paper, numbers, symbols without meaning. Money solved a problem humans struggled with for thousands of years. Barter is inefficient. Direct exchange limits scale. Money became a shared promise. This will be worth something later. Not because it is valuable, but because others will accept it. That is the entire system. No gold, no government, no technology, just belief. People believe money fails when it runs out. That is false. Money fails when people stop trusting tomorrow. As long as people believe, I can use this later, the system holds. The moment that belief cracks, even slightly, money becomes unstable, not worthless, unreliable. And unreliability destroys systems faster than scarcity ever could. Money never fails dramatically at first. It hesitates. Payments delay. Limits appear. Temporary measures are announced. People tell themselves, this will pass. That belief keeps the system alive just a little longer. But hesitation spreads faster than panic. History shows the same pattern again and again. The collapse does not begin with empty wallets. It begins with doubt. People ask, should I spend now? Should I save? Should I convert? Should I wait? Once people stop knowing what the correct action is, money loses its function as a guide. And without guidance, markets freeze. Money is supposed to measure value. When prices stop making sense, money stops being money. When a salary cannot predict survival, work becomes meaningless. When savings cannot protect the future, time itself feels unstable. People do not riot immediately. They pause. And that pause is deadly. Most people assume collapse looks violent. It does not. Collapse looks quiet. People continue working. Stores remain open. Governments speak calmly. But underneath, something fundamental has changed. People no longer plan. They only react. And a society that cannot plan cannot remain stable. Money is stored trust. It is belief saved for later. When people stop believing later exists in a predictable form, money becomes useless. Not because it disappeared, but because the future it promised no longer feels real. There is no official announcement when money stops working. No sirens. No declaration. No countdown. There is only a moment when enough people decide, individually and quietly, I don't trust this anymore. And once that threshold is crossed, no authority can restore it by force. Money is not fragile because it is paper. It is fragile because it lives inside the human mind. And minds change faster than systems can react. That is why money collapses are never solved quickly. And why their effects last far longer than anyone expects. The most dangerous moment in any financial collapse is not the crash. It is the delay before the crash. Because delays feel temporary. A payment that takes longer than usual. A transfer that is under review. A withdrawal that is limited for your protection. These are not alarms. They are whispers. And humans are very good at ignoring whispers. When uncertainty appears, people do not move immediately. They wait. Waiting feels rational. Waiting feels calm. Waiting feels mature. But waiting is only safe when systems are stable. In unstable systems, waiting is surrender. The longer people wait, the fewer options remain. Every failing monetary system uses the same language: short-term controls, temporary limits, precautionary pauses. None of these words sound dangerous. That is why they work. People accept them because they believe normalcy will return. But systems rarely revert once controls are introduced. They tighten. They expand. They normalize. Humans adapt quickly to small losses. A little less access today feels manageable. A slightly lower limit tomorrow feels tolerable. This gradual restriction prevents panic, but it also prevents resistance. By the time people realize the system has changed, they're already living inside the new rules. Trust does not vanish all at once. It leaks. People begin to diversify just in case. They test alternatives. They make backup plans they never needed before. These behaviors are invisible individually, but collectively they weaken the system. Money works only when people commit fully to it. Hesitation drains it of power. At some point, people notice something subtle. Holding money feels strange. Not useless. Not dangerous. Uncertain. They begin asking, should I hold this? Should I exchange it? Should I spend it now? When money creates questions instead of answers, its role is already collapsing. Markets do not crash immediately. They freeze. Transactions slow. Deals pause. Decisions are postponed. This paralysis is more destructive than panic. Panic moves resources. Freezing traps them. An economy cannot function if everyone waits for clarity that never comes. Authorities respond with statements. They say, there is no cause for concern. The system remains strong. Confidence is high. These words are meant to calm, but reassurance only works when trust already exists. When trust is weak, reassurance sounds defensive, and defensiveness signals danger. In stable times, information clarifies. In unstable times, information confuses. Contradictory reports emerge. Experts disagree. Predictions multiply. People stop knowing who to believe. When interpretation becomes exhausting, people disengage, and disengagement accelerates collapse. There is a moment when recovery is still possible, but it requires one thing. People must believe others will continue believing. Once that recursive trust breaks, once people assume others are losing faith, the system enters free fall. Not visibly, not immediately, but irreversibly. This phase feels survivable. Life continues. Bills are paid. Shelves remain stocked. That illusion convinces people they have time. They do not. By the time consequences become visible, choices are already gone. As money weakens, priorities change. Long-term plans shrink. Short-term security dominates. People stop thinking in years. They think in weeks, then days. A society that thinks only in days cannot sustain complex systems. Originally, money promised stability. Now it promises uncertainty. And humans do not invest their lives in uncertainty. They seek alternatives. Not all alternatives are good, but all feel safer than waiting. Some people leave early. They exit markets. They convert assets. They relocate. They are often criticized at first. Later, they are envied. Early exit is not panic. It is pattern recognition. From the outside, everything looks intact. Banks operate. Governments speak. Numbers exist. But the core is hollow. Money still circulates. But belief no longer does. And without belief, circulation is meaningless. A price is not a number. It is a story. It tells people what something is worth right now, and what it will likely be worth tomorrow. As long as that story feels believable, markets function. The moment it stops making sense, price becomes noise. At first, prices do not explode. They wobble. A product costs slightly more in one place than another. The difference cannot be explained. People notice, but they do not react. They assume supply issues. They assume logistics. They assume anything except system failure. Normally, people compare. This store versus that store. Today versus yesterday. This salary versus that expense. Comparison is how humans maintain orientation. When prices change too fast, comparison becomes impossible. Without comparison, value cannot be understood. Money is supposed to measure effort, time, and scarcity. When prices shift hourly, money cannot perform that function. A salary no longer reflects labor. A cost no longer reflects value. People stop trusting numbers. They rely on instinct. Instinct is a poor replacement for structure. Hoarding does not begin with panic. It begins with uncertainty. People buy slightly more than usual. They stock up just in case. No one feels guilty. No one feels extreme. But multiplied across millions, this behavior empties systems. Prices rise because people buy more. People buy more because prices rise. This loop feeds itself. No single actor causes it. No single decision stops it. Once the loop starts, intentions no longer matter. Planning requires stable prices. When people cannot predict cost, they cannot plan education, healthcare, business, or family, life contracts. People stop thinking about growth. They think about survival. Wages are delayed prices. They assume stability between earning and spending. When that gap becomes dangerous, work feels disconnected from survival. People begin asking, why am I working if it no longer protects me? That question changes everything. As official prices fail, unofficial systems emerge. Cash discounts, personal deals, private agreements. These systems favor insiders. Outsiders pay more or are excluded entirely. Trust becomes localized. Markets fragment. Effort no longer correlates with reward. Timing matters more than skill. Access matters more than merit. This creates anger, not explosive anger. Slow, corrosive resentment. Uncertainty is heavier than loss. People can adapt to hardship. They struggle with unpredictability. When prices stop making sense, mental exhaustion sets in. Decision fatigue becomes universal. People stop buying what they want. They buy what lasts. Durability replaces pleasure. Utility replaces comfort. Cultural life shrinks. Creative industries suffer first. Some people believe they can outsmart the system. They trade faster. They speculate. They chase signals. A few succeed briefly. Most fail badly. Complex systems punish overconfidence. Large numbers stop meaning anything. Prices with too many zeros feel abstract. People stop reacting emotionally. They disengage. Disengagement signals collapse more than fear ever could. The most telling sign of failure is subtle. People stop asking the price. They ask, do you have it? Can I get it? Is it available? Money has stopped being the question. Access has replaced it. Black markets are not criminal inventions. They are efficiency responses. When official systems fail, unofficial ones fill the gap. They operate on trust, risk, and power. And they're extremely difficult to dismantle. Some people adjust quickly. They change jobs. They change habits. They change networks. Others wait for restoration. Waiting becomes the most expensive choice. Friendships strain. Families argue. Communities fragment. Money was never just economic. It was social glue. As it fails, relationships feel pressure. Occasionally, prices slow. People breathe. They believe stability has returned. But this pause is often temporary. False recoveries are more dangerous than obvious collapses. Eventually, nothing feels fairly priced. Not food. Not labor. Not housing. The concept of fair disappears. When fairness vanishes, trust follows. At this stage, money has not vanished. It is still used, still counted, still exchanged, but it no longer anchors reality. It drifts. People stop being surprised. Surprise is replaced by resignation. That emotional shift marks a deeper collapse than any headline ever could. Systems can limp. They do not fail cleanly. This phase may last months or years, long enough to reshape behavior permanently. Belief does not shatter. It erodes. People do not declare it gone. They simply stop referencing it. Money fades from decision-making. When money stops measuring life, life reorganizes around something else. Time, energy, connections, control. And once that shift happens, money can never return to its old role. Work is not just effort. It is a promise that effort today will protect tomorrow. When that promise breaks, work loses its psychological foundation. People can endure hard labor. They cannot endure meaningless labor. As money weakens, a gap forms. People still work, but work no longer guarantees security. Salaries arrive late. Raises mean nothing. Bonuses evaporate instantly. The link between labor and life breaks. Most people do not stop working immediately. They hope. They fear consequences. They cling to routine. Routine feels stabilizing even when it no longer functions. But hope has an expiration date. At some point, people ask themselves, if this cannot protect me, why am I doing it? They do not say it out loud. They do not protest. They disengage. And disengagement is invisible until it is everywhere. People show up. They clock in. They perform tasks. But effort drops. Creativity disappears. Initiative fades. Responsibility feels optional. No one sabotages intentionally. They simply stop caring. Jobs once considered prestigious lose their meaning. Titles feel empty. Expertise feels undervalued. People stop aspiring upward. They aspire sideways, to safety, access, and flexibility. The human brain avoids wasted energy. When effort does not produce security, motivation collapses. This is not laziness. It is adaptation. The system is no longer worth investing in. People do just enough. Enough to avoid punishment. Enough to maintain appearances. Not enough to innovate. Not enough to sustain complex systems. Societies run on excess effort. Minimum effort is not enough. Essential jobs suffer most. They require high effort. They offer low flexibility. When compensation fails, these workers feel betrayal first. Burnout spreads. Absences rise. Services degrade. Infrastructure depends on reliability. When workers disengage, maintenance slips. Errors increase. Breakdowns multiply. Small failures compound. Systems begin failing in visible ways. Authority relies on incentives. When incentives stop working, authority becomes symbolic. Threats lose power. Rewards lose meaning. Compliance becomes conditional. Careers assume progression. Education experience stability. When stability disappears, career paths collapse. People stop investing years into systems that may not survive months. People choose immediate benefits over long-term outcomes. They switch jobs impulsively. They take risks they would never take before. Stability no longer rewards patience. As formal work loses meaning, informal work expands. Side deals, private services, undocumented exchanges. These feel more reliable than official systems. Skilled people adapt fastest. They leave institutions early. They find alternatives. Institutions are left with fewer capable workers. Accelerating decline. When work feels pointless, self-worth erodes. People tie identity to contribution. When contribution feels useless, identity weakens. This leads to depression, anger, and social withdrawal. Once people emotionally detach from work, re-engagement is extremely difficult. Even if conditions improve, memory of futility remains. Trust does not reset easily. Institutions continue functioning on paper. Reports are filed. Meetings are held. Statements are released. But behind the scenes, the system is hollow. Performance becomes theater. People adjust expectations downward. Outages are expected. Delays are forgiven. Mistakes are tolerated. Normalization masks collapse. Eventually, people stop introducing themselves by profession. Work becomes something they do, not who they are. That shift signals deep structural change. Young people observe all of this. They adjust their aspirations accordingly. A generation grows up without faith in effort. The damage outlives the crisis. If work no longer organizes life, what does? That question marks the transition into a different social order. Money made work central. When money fails, work loses its role as society's backbone. Something else will replace it. Not immediately, not cleanly, but inevitably. When money fails, it leaves a vacuum. Humans do not tolerate vacuums for long. Something must replace money's role. Deciding priorities, allocating resources, organizing relationships. That replacement is rarely chosen. It emerges. People turn toward what they can touch. Food, water, medicine, fuel, shelter. Abstract value loses appeal. Physical certainty becomes dominant. The closer something is to survival, the more valuable it becomes. Barter reappears quickly. It feels logical. It feels ancient. It feels human. But barter scales poorly. It works between neighbors. It fails between strangers. It collapses under complexity. Barter is a symptom, not a solution. Trust shifts from systems to people. Who you know matters more than what you have. Access replaces ownership. Favors replace contracts. Reputation replaces credit scores. Social capital becomes survival capital. Skills that produce immediate results rise sharply. Repair, protection, medical knowledge, food production. Credentials lose relevance. Effectiveness becomes everything. People stop asking, "Where did you learn?" They ask, "Can you do it?" Highly specialized roles struggle. Their value depends on systems that no longer function. Generalists adapt. They combine skills. They improvise. Flexibility becomes more valuable than mastery. Ownership assumes stability. Access assumes instability. People stop buying. They start negotiating use. Shared resources. Rotating possession. Temporary control. Nothing feels permanent anymore. As centralized systems weaken, local authority strengthens. Community leaders. Informal enforcers. Resource controllers. Power decentralizes, but unevenly. Some communities stabilize. Others fracture. In stable systems, morality is abstract. In unstable systems, morality is situational. People justify actions they would once condemn. Not out of cruelty. Out of necessity. Safety becomes valuable. Those who can provide protection gain leverage. Security shifts from public to private. Protection is traded. Loyalty is expected. Neutrality disappears. Reliable information is scarce. Those who control it gain power. Rumors move markets. Whispers shape behavior. Silence creates fear. Truth competes with usefulness. Wealth is no longer accumulation. It is resilience. The ability to absorb shocks. To recover quickly. To adapt without breaking. Visibility becomes dangerous. Discretion becomes valuable. Crisis reveals underlying structures. Strong communities tighten. Weak ones dissolve. Trust accelerates outcomes, good or bad. Neutrality vanishes. Those without networks suffer first. Isolation becomes fatal. Institutions once provided inclusion. Now individuals must earn it socially. Loneliness becomes a survival risk. Contrary to expectation, violence does not erupt instantly. People test alternatives. They negotiate. They adapt. Violence emerges only when adaptation fails. People adjust expectations. They redefine success. They shrink ambitions. They normalize hardship. Life continues, just differently. Long-term dreams fade. People focus on continuity, not progress. Stability replaces growth. Maintenance replaces ambition. Civilization pauses its forward motion. To outsiders, it looks like going backward. To insiders, it feels like survival. History does not move forward in a straight line. It loops. Adapting saves lives, but it changes people. Caution replaces openness. Suspicion replaces trust. Pragmatism replaces idealism. The human cost lingers. If this is the new system, how long can it last? No one knows. But everyone senses it is not temporary. Money no longer dominates, but something else soon will. Power, control, access. The system is reassembling, not collapsing. This is not the end of society. It is the end of a specific version of it. What comes next depends on who organizes first. When money fails, wealth lies. Balances mean nothing. Assets freeze. Ownership becomes abstract. The people who survive first are rarely the richest. They are the most adaptable. In stable systems, status protects. In unstable systems, speed protects. Those who move early before certainty retain options. Those who wait for confirmation lose them. Adaptability begins in the mind. People who can abandon old assumptions adjust faster. People who cling to how things should be break under pressure. Rigidity is expensive. Resources can be taken. They can spoil. They can be lost. Networks regenerate. People who are trusted, useful, and connected gain access repeatedly. Isolation multiplies risk. Intelligence predicts ideas. Skills produce outcomes. In collapse, outcomes matter. Fixing, growing, protecting, treating. These create immediate value. Abstract expertise loses relevance. The extremely rich face visibility. The extremely poor lack buffers. Those in between adapt fastest. They know systems, but are not dependent on them. They are invisible enough to move. Survivors share emotional traits. They remain calm. They tolerate uncertainty. They avoid extremes. Panic kills. Denial kills. Balance survives. Many people with resources collapse anyway. They overthink. They hesitate. They wait for permission that never comes. Experience becomes a liability. When it ties identity to the old system, pride delays adaptation. People refuse help. They reject informal work. They cling to titles. By the time pride breaks, options are limited. Usefulness replaces importance. People who solve problems become indispensable. Those who demand recognition become expendable. Value is measured daily. Communities distribute risk. They share resources. They exchange labor. They protect members. Individuals bear full exposure. Collective survival outperforms lone resilience. Visibility attracts pressure. Those who appear successful become targets, socially or physically. Survivors learn discretion. Survival is not a single decision. It is constant adjustment. What works today may fail tomorrow. Those who keep reassessing stay ahead. Rigid moral frameworks struggle. Survivors recalibrate without abandoning humanity. They make difficult trade-offs without dehumanizing others. Extremes on either side fail. No one controls collapse. Survivors do not seek control. They seek alignment. They flow with conditions, not against them. Physical strength helps, but it is not decisive. Coordination beats force. Preparation beats aggression. Intelligence combined with humility survives. Those who rely entirely on salaries, institutions, authority, a predictability. They are optimized for stability, not disruption. Those who adapt early pull ahead rapidly. Those who adapt late fall permanently behind. Recovery rarely equalizes. Survivors carry guilt. They remember who adapted slower, who trusted too long, who waited. Survival is not clean. Survival is the beginning. Once immediate danger passes, new hierarchies form. Those who survived first shape what comes next. Not financial, not political, adaptive. They understand uncertainty. They operate without guarantees. They become the architects of the next system. At some point, survival turns into influence. Those who control access begin organizing behavior. The next phase begins. Who decides the rules now? Money no longer does. People do. Collapse does not respect borders. It moves through expectation, fear, and imitation. People do not need proof. They need suspicion. Once suspicion travels, systems weaken everywhere. Data explains. Confidence decides. Markets run on belief, not spreadsheets. When belief falters, even good data feels irrelevant. Perception outruns reality. People watch others closely. If others hesitate, they hesitate. If others withdraw, they withdraw. Behavior spreads faster than information. One failing system reflects onto others. A banking issue becomes a supply issue. A supply issue becomes a labor issue. A labor issue becomes a security issue. Everything mirrors everything else. Interdependence amplifies collapse. Governments attempt isolation, controls, barriers, restrictions. This slow movement,
but they do not stop belief.
Belief leaks through conversation, media, and memory. Stories shape behavior faster than facts. A single rumor can empty shelves. A single story can freeze markets. Narratives replace analysis. People trust what others do, more than what experts say. If enough people act as if collapse is real, it becomes real. Reality follows behavior. Fear causes protective action. Protective action causes shortages. Shortages confirm fear. The loop accelerates itself. Breaking it requires trust, which is already gone. Fast information magnifies instability. By the time corrections arrive, behavior has already shifted. Speed removes reflection. Reflection prevents panic. Central authorities react slowly. Local behavior shifts quickly. By the time policy responds, patterns are entrenched. Control loses relevance. Modern systems are networks. When nodes fail, others reroute, until overload spreads failure. Collapse is not linear. It cascades. Trust takes years to build. It collapses in days. Restoration is slow and uneven. People remember losses more vividly than reassurances. Seeing collapse elsewhere, plants doubt locally. If it happened there, why not here? Geography no longer protects belief. People compare outcomes. If others suffer less, resentment grows. If others suffer more, fear grows. Comparison destabilizes cohesion. False optimism delays adaptation. It encourages waiting when action is needed. Hope without realism becomes denial. People withdraw effort, participation, and cooperation. Withdrawal starves systems. Participation is voluntary. Once withdrawn, systems collapse. Collapse is collective. No single actor causes it. No single actor stops it. Responsibility diffuses. Diffusion paralyzes response. People stop agreeing on facts. Multiple interpretations coexist. Without shared reality, coordination fails. Society fragments cognitively. Normalization is the final stage. People stop reacting emotionally. They adjust behavior automatically. Collapse becomes background noise. At this stage, collapse is not an event. It is a condition. Fixing conditions requires rebuilding belief, not systems. Shock fades. Patterns remain. People build routines around dysfunction. Dysfunction becomes structure. Media moves on. Attention shifts. But the system remains altered. Silence replaces alarm. Failure stabilizes. It stops changing, but remains broken. This stability prevents urgency. Can belief be restored? Yes, but not quickly, and not uniformly. Recovery requires narrative,
time, and leadership.
The longer collapse persists, the harder recovery becomes. Behavior hardens. Expectations reset. Temporary damage becomes permanent. As collapse spreads, a new equilibrium forms. It may be harsher. It may be smaller. But it is functional. The old system still exists on paper. But its influence has faded. People no longer orient around it. Not with chaos, but with quiet acceptance. This is when rebuilding begins. When money fails, institutions do not fix mechanics first. They fix narratives. They speak. They reassure. They promise continuity. Because money does not collapse from numbers. It collapses from lost belief. The earliest response is denial. There is no crisis. This is temporary. Fundamentals are strong. Denial buys time, but it erodes credibility. When reality contradicts reassurance, trust collapses further. Authorities introduce systems, new platforms, new rules, new instruments. They assume mechanics cause the failure. But mechanics are not the problem.
Confidence is.
Without belief, even perfect systems fail. Introducing new currency feels decisive. New bills, new digits, new branding. But new money requires trust. And trust is precisely what is missing. People accept new money only if they trust the issuer. In collapse, issuers are doubted. Some attempt enforcement, mandates, restrictions, penalties. Force can compel usage, but it cannot compel belief. People comply publicly and defect privately. Parallel systems expand. Names change. Logos change. Terminology shifts. But memory remains. People remember loss more vividly than messaging. Rebranding without restitution fails. Governments stage gestures. High-profile purchases. Public confidence displays. Official endorsements. These symbols work briefly, if people want to believe. When belief is gone, symbols look performative. Collapse is emotional. Restoration is rational. Emotion spreads faster. People need repeated proof. Over time, without contradiction. Consistency matters more than speed. Some sectors stabilize faster. Others lag. Uneven recovery fuels resentment. If people see others recover first, they doubt fairness. Fairness matters for belief. Guarantees feel reassuring, but they create liability. If guarantees fail even once, credibility is destroyed completely. Unkept promises damage trust more than silence. People adapt faster than policy. By the time official fixes arrive, people have moved on. They no longer depend on the system. Restoration misses its audience. Older generations remember stability. Younger ones do not. Restoration messages resonate unevenly. Those without memory of stability see no reason to believe. Trust cannot be taught. It must be experienced. Institutions seek blame. External forces. Internal enemies. Previous leadership. Blame simplifies narrative, but fractures unity. People focus on survival, not explanations. Restoring money requires mass participation. Partial adoption fails. If even a minority defects, confidence remains fragile. Money requires near universal belief. Sometimes, belief returns briefly. Markets calm. Prices stabilize. Optimism rises. This phase feels like recovery, but without structural trust, it is temporary. When recovery fails, the second collapse hits harder. People feel betrayed. Cynicism hardens. Second collapses destroy hope, not just wealth. Eventually, authorities speak less. They avoid promises. They avoid timelines. Silence preserves remaining credibility. But silence also confirms fragility. At some point, leaders stop trying to fix money. They manage consequences. Aid replaces policy. Containment replaces growth. The goal shifts from recovery to survival. People stop expecting return. They accept change. Acceptance is not happiness. It is exhaustion. People trust some transactions, some actors, some contexts. Money fragments. Multiple value systems coexist. Uniformity is gone. Failure teaches people not to believe next time. Each attempt weakens future credibility. Eventually, restoration is no longer attempted. By trying to restore money, institutions reveal its fragility. People realize belief is optional. That realization cannot be undone. At this stage, money may still exist, but it is no longer central. Life organizes around alternatives. Money becomes one tool among many, not the organizer of society. Its era, as the primary structure, ends quietly. The most misleading belief about collapse is that life stops. It does not. Life reorganizes around new constraints. People wake up. They eat. They work differently. They adapt. Collapse is not an ending. It is a rearrangement. Eventually, volatility slows. Not because systems recover, but because people stop expecting more. Expectations shrink. Smaller plans feel safer. Smaller goals feel achievable. Stability returns at a lower level. People stop asking, "When will this end?" They ask, "How do I live inside this?" That question marks psychological transition. Resistance fades. Adaptation solidifies. Scarcity becomes predictable. People plan around shortages. They time access carefully. They avoid waste instinctively. Scarcity stops feeling shocking. It becomes background. Success no longer means growth. It means continuity, being able to maintain health, relationships, and basic security becomes achievement. Ambition narrows. Large institutions fade. Small groups strengthen. Communities become inward-looking. Trust becomes local. Outsiders feel distant. The world feels smaller. Money becomes awkward. It no longer explains life. It no longer predicts outcomes. People talk about access, connections, and timing instead. Language adapts to reality. Long-term planning feels irresponsible. People avoid commitments that require faith in distant futures. Life compresses into shorter cycles.
Days.
Weeks. Occasionally months. Education shifts from aspiration to utility. People learn what works now. Abstract knowledge loses priority. Practical learning dominates. Teaching adapts or becomes irrelevant. What once felt extreme becomes routine. Side economies. Informal agreements. Personal negotiations. Nothing feels illegal, just necessary. People do not rebel. They disengage. They stop expecting systems to work. Disengagement is quieter than protest, and far more permanent, not because it is impossible, but because it requires belief. Belief is fragile after betrayal. People protect themselves emotionally. Hope becomes risky. The dominant emotion is not fear. It is fatigue. People are tired of adjusting, tired of uncertainty, tired of explanations. Fatigue stabilizes behavior. Large collective goals vanish. No grand projects. No shared visions. Coordination requires trust. Trust is scarce. Society fragments into personal trajectories. Small systems work. Local trade. Trusted services. Personal guarantees. These microsystems outlast larger structures. They are inefficient, but reliable. Once normalized, this state can persist for decades. Children grow up inside it. They never expect anything else. Memory of the old system fades. Adaptation reduces pain, but it also reduces urgency. People stop demanding better systems. Comfort in dysfunction prevents reform. The cost is not dramatic. It is cumulative. Lost innovation. Lost trust. Lost potential. These losses do not make headlines. Everything takes more effort. Simple tasks require negotiation. Basic needs require planning. Life feels slower. Not peaceful, heavy. Comparison hurts. People stop remembering how things were. Memory becomes painful. Forgetting feels safer. People stop defining themselves by systems. They define themselves by resilience. I manage. I get by. I adapt. Identity narrows but hardens. From the inside, this does not feel like collapse. It feels like realism. People adjust expectations to reduce disappointment. The old system is gone. A new one has not fully formed. This in-between state is where power quietly accumulates. If money no longer organizes life, what will? The answer is forming. Slowly, unevenly, inevitably. This calm is deceptive. It is not peace. It is pause. And pauses precede change. The story is not only about collapse elsewhere. It is a warning. Systems fail faster than belief. Belief fades faster than money. By the time consequences are visible, options are gone. delays in payment, minor shortages, rumors about instability. These are not minor anomalies. They are the whispers of failure. Pay attention before the system signals loud. Money may vanish. Assets may freeze. Authority may falter. Trust, personal, local, functional, becomes your real currency. Who you can rely on will define survival. Knowledge alone is insufficient. Preparation alone is insufficient. Those who survive are those who adapt continuously. Ability to pivot matters more than strength, wealth, or position. Do not depend on a single system. Financial, social, and logistical redundancy matters. Multiple avenues for survival reduce risk. This is not panic, this is strategy. People hoard knowledge, connections, and mutual aid. Those with strong networks will have access when formal systems fail. Invest in trust, reciprocity, and usefulness. Collapse rarely arrives in a single event. It creeps through behavior. Transactions slow. Rules shift. Small restrictions become permanent. Awareness buys time. Understand what your survival depends on. Banks, energy, logistics, governance, all are fragile. Identify alternative routes before they become critical. Contingency is preparation. Inaction is vulnerability. Normalcy is deceptive. Even minor fluctuations may be the first stage. Do not wait for confirmation. Act while options remain. Specialization fails without context. Being able to produce value for others ensures inclusion in networks. Skill combined with adaptability equals survival advantage. Fast, incomplete, or contradictory information dominates crises. Verify locally. Cross-check sources. Do not rely solely on authority. Act on observation and trust. Fear paralyzes. Panic spreads faster than scarcity. Acceptance without despair enables action. Resilience begins in the mind. Aggressive speculation often fails. Predictable, incremental, reliable actions outperform bold moves. Preserve resources and energy. Expend them strategically. Collapse is not one event. Recovery attempts, false stability, second waves, all occur. Do not assume temporary calm is permanent. Plan for cycles, not single outcomes. As formal systems weaken, informal structures emerge. Local networks, microeconomies, alternative leadership. Those who recognize early will integrate and benefit. Past collapses may differ in mechanics, but human behavior repeats. Suspicion spreads faster than trust. Adaptation beats knowledge. Observation outruns planning. Collapse is irreversible once momentum builds. Denial is dangerous. Acceptance allows action. Those who adapt define the future. Long-term goals may fail. Short-term effectiveness matters more. Daily survival, community contribution, securing essentials, these become triumphs. Preparation is about strategy, not fear. Calm planning outperforms reactive behavior. Invest in redundancy, networks, and useful skills. Individual choices influence collective outcomes. Withdrawals, hoarding, or collaboration all matter. Small decisions aggregate into systemic effects. Money is not permanent. Systems are fragile. Belief decays faster than infrastructure. Observe early. Adapt quickly. Invest in relationships and utility. Survival is not guaranteed, but action improves odds. The story is a mirror. It reflects vulnerabilities, behavior patterns, and choices. Those who understand the invisible rules of collapse can anticipate, navigate, and survive. Those who ignore them may be trapped when options vanish.